Welcome to Internally Guided Life, a podcast to help you unlock a life of balance, fulfillment, and joy. I'm Kayla Sweet, and together we are going to have fun and create change from the inside out. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back, my friends. We are here for another episode of Internally Guided Life, and today's episode is one that I know is going to be so nourishing for your heart, your soul, your consciousness, and it's going to hopefully help you expand your perspective and bring you into some deeper wholeness within yourself. We don't know exactly where we'll go, but the intention is to explore the areas of receptivity, mature manifestation, and shadow work, which you all know how I feel about shadow work, one of my favorite topics in the world. So, this combination is sure to be incredibly powerful. And we have an amazing guest joining us today to guide us through this conversation. Our guest is Keri Nola, and she is known by many as the Shadow Mama and the Receptivity Queen. She is an intuitive mentor, a spiritual guide, former psychotherapist, author, and the creator of the Messages from Shadow Oracle deck. She had over a decade of experience as a licensed psychotherapist, specializing in trauma recovery before retiring her license and stepping into this role as a mentor and a healer and somebody who can support others who are ready to alchemize their wounds into wisdom and purpose. So I am so excited to have this exploration. This conversation is for anyone who's ever felt stuck, who has struggled with the idea of manifesting, who is curious about shadow work, or just wanting a deeper and more expanded perspective into their healing. We're going to offer you something magical here. So with that, let's all take a deep breath, get excited, and welcome, Keri. I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you so much, Kayla. It's wonderful to be here. I'm breathing right along with you all and curious to see where we're led here today.
I know there's so many things. I'm like, this could be a 3 hour episode, but we're going to try to do it in one. We're going to do our best.
Maybe end up being a series. We'll see what we can
Yeah.
do. We'll bend time and get it all here. Yeah.
Well, before I just let my curiosity totally take me away, I want to give you the opportunity to share a little bit of your story. And I gave kind of the high points, but it's always different to hear directly. So yeah, tell us what brought you here and what are you about in the world right now?
Hmm. So I've always been a curious soul and a soul that really cares about people and connection and doing that deeply and with integrity. And, many people, I find we all have a particular point of struggle in life where one area tends to be the loudest. And for some, it's purpose, for some, it's relationships, for some, it's our health or our body. But those are tend to be the three. And for me, purpose came the easiest.
Hmm.
So since I was a little girl, I knew I would help. I knew I would teach. I didn't know exactly what form that would take until I got into high school and college and learned that therapy was a thing. And it was such a natural just evolution for me to get into that work. And honestly, I thought I would be doing it forever and ever in that particular form of sitting across from people one on one, being a therapist. And I loved the work. It was beautiful and sacred. I learned so much and feel so humbled by those who welcomed me onto their path to support. And then there was a nudge at a point around 2016 that said, there's more than this, and this is one way of serving, and your service is meant for a different form now. So, long story short, I kicked and screamed for a few years, tried to ignore the whispers, which then became loud knocks and bangs, and I got really ill and, felt like I was dying. And my spiritual teacher said, yeah, you are, but not physically. This is an ego death. Like you have to give up the identity that you're so addicted to and like married to because it's time to identify and blossom, emerge in a new way. And that's the messages from Shadow Deck was really born out of that like season for myself because through that period I was suffering and struggling and was looking to resources and wasn't really feeling a lot of clarity. Traditional oracle decks were taking me back to it's all working out, you're right on track, your angels are watching over you. And I'm like, that's great. And why do I feel like crap? Like, what can't I see that would be
Right.
really helpful for me right now?
Something missing.
What's that piece, right? And but you see, at that time, I was a therapist, right? I didn't think of myself as an intuitive or a psychic. And when an oracle deck revealed itself to me, I'm like, yeah, but that's not mine to do. Like, I'm not that girl. And it wasn't until I really was like, oh gosh, this is being handed to me. Maybe this is mine to do. And I got over myself and moved through that fear and had the courage to just answer that call. It was the tool that helped me first and then became a body of work that I began sharing with others and, training practitioners in how to use it as well. So I think we can start with that.
Yeah, I love your story and I love that you were kind of moved into this work through therapy. I think when we talked before, I told you that was my original planned trajectory, and
Yeah.
then the universe called me in other directions, and here we are. But yeah, sometimes we listen to those whispers, and sometimes we let them become screams, and I had to fight my way through some burnout and some existential crisis before I could listen, but that happens.
It does. I think when we have um, a big purpose and something to voice and, excuse me, express in the world, we go through trials and tribulations that forge us into the one that's like ready and able to do that. So I
Yeah.
really relate to that path.
Yes. Yeah, the struggles really serve eventually. It just doesn't always feel that way in the moment.
Exactly. Yes.
So let's just dig right in. We've got like these three powerful kind of topics that are all kind of woven together. So I'm just going to see how we can navigate this. But I know one of the things we talked about when we connected previously that I was really interested in bringing to this episode is this idea of receptivity and the art of being receptive. And I think it's something that we struggle with. So,
Yeah.
yeah, talk to me a little bit about that. I start anywhere and we'll go, we'll see where.
Yeah. Well, the place I'm called to begin is like I w- was I was doing a lot of abundance work, talking about money and making money and what abundance means. And the original birth of my community was called the Abundance Activator. And it was like the puzzle piece fit, but like not all the way. I felt like it was a starting place, but there was something else that would reveal. And one of my the members of my community said to me one day, every time I am in your presence, I just feel more receptive afterwards. And I was like, receptive. Oh. And I realized that in order to experience abundance, we have to be receptive to letting it in. Because a lot of times abundance is circling us. It's around in the form of money, in the form of love, in the form of, peace or resources, opportunities, like creativity. And if we are not receptive to it, we are missing the opportunities and we don't see it. It's like we're blind to that. So to me, receptivity is the precursor to having what is meant for us. And we are really trained to be ashamed of what we desire, of what we want. We're supposed to be grateful for what we have. And, it's almost like if I want more, I must not be grateful for what I have.
Yes,
And
that.
That's a big piece of my teaching is, oh no, no, both can be true. This is a both and, right? I can be so grateful and just so humbled by all of the blessings, and I can desire more. And actually what I've come to discover is it's not only I can do that, but I'm supposed to do that. Like we're not here to not experience what is ours. And so it's not just about wanting more things, which it's fine to want things, nice experiences and I drive a designer car, I have a few designer bags, but it's also about just wanting what is true for you to have.
Mm.
And it is our job as we mature and evolve on our human journey to get in touch with what that is and to do the work of letting ourselves have it.
Yes, I love this. Yeah, let's circle around this idea that we feel guilty when we want more because that was something that I think I even pushed up against in myself in my own journey when I was going through some of the burnout stuff or was feeling called in a different direction because it was like I grew up in poverty. I'm not in poverty anymore. I have a degree. I'm very privileged. I have a job. My bills are paid. Why don't I feel satisfied? Or why am I being called somewhere else? Or why am I feeling like this friction between where I'm at and what I feel like I'm being called to? Like there was so much discomfort around that that it was exhausting. That was definitely a component of that. And I think so many people get kind of stuck in that, and especially women, that's who I work with primarily. It's this feeling of like, well, if I want more, I'm not grateful. And like, I need to just be grateful for what I have. So, yeah, help me unpack this.
Yeah. This is where we've got to write ourselves a permission slip, an upgraded permission slip, permission to want what we want. And, I also just want to, instead of like personally, like taking this personally or feeling like ashamed about this, I want us to know that this is collective programming. This is running through the collective consciousness, scarcity programming. There's not enough. There's not enough. Like if you have this, then somebody else is missing out. And not enough, not enough. So part of this is realizing that maybe there's more than we realized. And also at a soul level, we said this would be nourishing to the soul. So let's bring that into
Yeah,
the conversation
yeah.
here. At the soul level, we're not all here to have the same experience. And that is difficult because we do look around and we see people having more or less than us. And it makes our heart hurt, in this human experience. We don't want to feel like we're in a better position than someone else. But from a spiritual lens, we're not all meant to be on the same path. And I've we can project a lot onto other people, like they would want our life or they want
Right.
more, or and maybe they do, but also maybe they don't. Like I have talked with people who like the life that they have. They are happy, they are at peace. And in any case, it's not very helpful for us to have less if we care about others that are suffering, because we can't be very helpful if we don't have anything to offer or anything to give. So one of my mentors says, like, you being broke doesn't help anybody. Like, that's not. So we have this story that, oh, if I just take a little bit and I'm starving, it's like, well, if you're well nourished and you let yourself have more and you have the capacity to generate more, whatever more is, if it's more money, if it's more joy, if it's more peace, then you become a mirror able to remind and emanate and share that. So that's where the frequency of generosity comes. If
Mm.
you don't let yourself receive, your capacity for generosity is limited.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have anything to offer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like our nervous system is shot. It's like if your bills aren't getting paid, I help a lot of healers in receptivity and building their business and bringing their service into the world. And so, when they are giving every client a sliding scale fee and then they can't pay their own bills, it's like, it's not helpful because you're burnt out and
Yeah.
then you're not able to serve from that place. So it's almost also an ethical issue to if you're serving, and that can look like being a mama, being a partner, that can look like being in a service industry. It's like when we're filled up, we can serve from that place, and that is generous, that is loving, that is aligned for us to be doing.
Yes, yeah. There's so many things that are popping into my head right now, but like I'm also thinking, I mean, within leadership, that's something that I'm also passionate about, right? And that's a service. If you are leading from a healthy, conscious place, it is a service and a duty and something that you can't do well if you are depleted and exhausted and worn out and aren't receiving what you need. I love that you use the word nourish, like to nourish ourselves, our bodies, minds, souls, our emotional states. You mentioned joy. Like there's so many ways that we can be open to the experiences of life and to be okay with wanting that, to have that permission slip to want what you want. I love that. It's so simple, but so many of us don't give ourselves that permission, or we tell ourselves it's not for us for some reason.
Exactly. And we're looking around waiting for the world to give us permission. And because not everyone is doing this work and many people are unaware and it's not in their consciousness, they're repeating family patterns where women just burnt themselves out, giving, 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 taking for themselves last. And they're not going to be the one to give us permission because they haven't given it to themselves yet. So, as you're listening to this, I would literally invite you to get out a piece of paper and say, I grant myself permission to, and fill in that blank with that place where you have been struggling to gift yourself permission. And just let that be like a guiding light. You might need to read it many times a day for a while, but it's a starting place. It reorients our consciousness to another direction. And then what would granting myself that permission look like? What does a woman who gives herself permission like that do? What boundaries does she set? What How does she walk in the world? What does she say yes to? What does she say no to? What does she admit that she desires and wants to have? And those are very powerful like postures to hold in the world.
Yes. And I think it's so important that you mentioned the way that when others are trapped in the conditioning or the patterning, sometimes, often generational and societal patterning, right? That they can't give us the permission that we want. And that's another thing that, we so often are like looking to somebody to tell us that it's okay to want this or like it's okay to do this thing. Even in coaching, that comes up where people already know what's good for them and what they need and what they want, and that voice inside them is already telling them, and yet they're hoping I can tell them it's okay to want that. So it's like you don't actually need anybody else's permission, and they might not be in a place to give it to you because they're not there. They're not seeing that. Like you have to be that for you.
Yeah, and one of the ways that we sabotage ourselves is by waiting for that permission or by using their lack of permission as evidence for, see, I'm not supposed to have that.
Mm.
When it's a myth, it's an illusion, right? So we're stepping into at the start, you mentioned my work around mature manifestation.
Yeah.
But maturity for me really is a thread that runs through all of my work because it takes maturity to be able to oversee the parts of ourselves that have learned things that are no longer true. I call them truths with a little t. Like they were true to the little girl that may have been told she's not allowed to have that, or who grew up in a household without resources, whether they be financial or emotional or otherwise. But now, as grown women, we're in the position to maturely relate to ourselves and to tell ourselves the truth with the capital T, which often requires a lot of upgrades in, is this true? Is this true? How true is it?
Yeah.
Like, how do I know? Who am I looking to validate that? And that's why I love, when women are doing this work, we can be mirrors for each other. Like, hey, give yourself more, girl. Like, you don't have to settle for that. Like, I
Yeah.
want you to get bigger and bolder and like, what else do you want? And in my community, we celebrate the wins. And when we talk about what else do you want? What else do you want? What else?
I
Like, if you could
love
have
it.
anything, like, tell me more and let
Yeah.
it get as, like, wild as it might be. But it's incredibly vulnerable because oftentimes we've gone with unmet needs. And I think this really starts so early, right? If we've felt bad or guilty, or if we wanted something that our caregivers didn't have the means to provide, we learned how to stop asking. And then we learned how to stop wanting. And then those things got buried deeper and deeper and deeper to the point where we might not even know what we want or desire anymore.
Mm. Yeah.
It's like real deep in there.
Yeah, yeah, it is so vulnerable to want to dream. Like there's some emotional risk involved in that. And like, yeah, as you said, when that's conditioned in or those needs haven't been met, it's scary. It's scary to admit that you're setting yourself up for like if I speak this and people know that I want this, then like what does that mean? If I don't get it, you're still not sure if it's for you. Like it's there's just so much stickiness around it. What I've got like multiple questions on the tip of my brain, so I'm trying to direct myself. What are some of the challenges you see in the clientele you're working with when it comes to starting to access more receptivity and start to open up that permission to be vulnerable enough to dream and to want and to receive?
Well, one of the reasons I birthed the receptivity portal was to be able to do this work in community because I discovered that when you are trying to do this work in an environment with people who aren't doing this work, it makes it really challenging. It's like swimming upstream. You can do it, but it's going to require a lot more like effort and oomph because you don't have the proper holding, the proper tending, the proper support. Like there are neural pathways that have been like secured and these grooves that are so worn about doing it this way. And so then when you're trying to create a new neural pathway that says, I get to do it this other way, and you're around people who are also practicing that, those new pathways have the opportunity to develop so much more quickly. So
Mm,
one of the challenges I see is people needing to kind of clean house. And this doesn't mean like get rid of your family and just like but be mindful of the environments that you're spending time in. And instead of taking people out of your life, maybe you'll find down the road that that needs to happen and relationships need upgrading, but adding things to your life that are more aligned with not who you've been, but who you're becoming so that you have that support and you're making it more graceful and more easy. And you have people that will celebrate you and lift you up as you make these changes, as opposed to try to keep you the same.
hmm. Yeah, because it's scary for the people around you who have known you in a certain way when you start
Yep.
to change and to evolve and to heal and to want. If they're very comfortable with you the way they were, out of good intentions, often they will
Yes.
tug you back to where you were.
I remember reading years ago Harriet Lerner's book, The Dance of Anger. I don't know if you read that one,
I
but
haven't.
in it, she talks exactly what we're saying right now, where it's like you change and someone gets really angry because they're like, whoa, this wasn't our agreement. Whoa, that's not what we said we do here. And it can be vulnerable for partners in particular, or family members, or longtime friends, colleagues, even because they can feel afraid that you're going to leave them behind because they can feel your evolution. And there's something like comfortable about the familiar, like, oh, well, we always did it this way. And you get kind of lazy with your consciousness and you let each other get away with these ways of being that aren't really your full expression or your most authentic self, but they're easy and it's what we've been doing. So I think being empathic with both your own process, but also with the people around you who are feeling like maybe they're not really doing the work. Maybe they aren't sure if they even want to get on that path with you and they're afraid of losing you or things changing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is scary for them. I like the way that you said like you can pull maybe new people in rather than like this, okay, rapid of cutting of ties of everybody that you know and everything that you've known. Like, what does it look like to just start to pull in more of what you want your future to look like, more relationships of what you want your future to look like, more surroundings of who you're becoming rather than who you were, like this like kind of slow process. And I love that you offer this work within a group container too, because I think it's isolating to be on a journey like this if you don't have other people on the journey
Yeah.
with you too. Like you do get to expand together quicker, and that's really cool. And you might go to work and there might not be anyone at your work who really understands what you're doing, and that can feel really alone. Like if you have other
Yeah.
people, they're committed too, and you realize you're so connected with these other beings on the journey.
Absolutely. And I find that the community aspect it makes it harder to keep lying to ourselves because you might have a story that, like, for the people that I support, healers are like, oh, healers don't make a lot of money, or, healers aren't visible, or healers don't do this, or all these stories, right? Just whatever we
Hmm.
tell ourselves to keep ourselves small. And now you see a healer making multiple six figures, publishing a book, taking the stage, having an award-winning podcast, whatever it might be, things that you've considered doing, but maybe were shy or scared. And then you're like, oh, not only did someone out there that I heard on a podcast or read about in a book, but this is like my sister in group. Like, this is my girl. Like, wow, if she can do it, like maybe I can do it. Maybe it's closer or more possible than I thought. And like I call it miracle consciousness or possibility consciousness. It's potent. It actually creates a field of like that can carry us, that can reorient us, that can make those shifts much more easy to do. So gifting ourselves the environments and the people that have our back as we're upgrading things is just, yeah, it's not a luxury. I think it's really necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. It does like open up that possibility. I think of the women in my life who have most inspired me, who have most impacted me, who have been on this journey with me, and the way that like every time they have a win, it's like a double win because it's excitement for their win and also like she's my friend, she's my sister. Like I know her. She can do it. I can do it. You can do it. Maybe we all can do way more than we thought we could.
And lifting each other up, I do think there is that sister wound that many of us have where we get afraid of seeing one of our sisters or friends like rise too far, and we're afraid of getting behind. And so we get jealous, and all these things are normal aspects of the human journey. But I think being in environments where we're lifting each other up and we're able to own those moments where we're scared or jealous, because,
Yeah.
one of the cards and the messages from Shadow Deck is jealousy. And the thing that came through when I was channeling the booklet page for that was, jealousy just means that someone else is giving themselves permission to be, do, or have something that you want to be, do, or have. And
Mm.
you're pissed about it. You're like, wait, what? That's not
Yeah.
fair. But it's informational. It's great data because you can see what it is that they have that is creating this activation in you, and that will give you information about maybe something you want or you desire that you maybe have tucked away. So that's one of the ways that our shadows can actually bring to light something really important for us to know about.
Yes, I love that you brought that up. As soon as you started talking about jealousy, in my mind, I thought, oh, yeah, like it's a mirror for your desires. And then you went to explain, I'm like, we are on the same wavelength. I love this. Okay, so,
Really are.
so I want to circle back a little bit because there was another topic that I wanted to dig into. So, I mean, they're all related, but mature manifestation, maturation in general, this process of psycho spiritual, like emotional maturity. This is a journey. How do you work with this idea and support people through this evolution?
Yeah, it's really a lot of ways. It depends on where they're starting out. And, sometimes we have a lot of ego running our life. And I would say immature manifestation is really just allowing that like primal, fear-based consciousness to run the show,
Mm,
right? Because that's it's immature. It's not the full truth. And that's what I say. I mean, I think immature and mature can have judgment associated with it. What I mean by this is like one is true and one is not. One is more true than the other. And so maturity is being in right relationship with the truth.
mm,
And uh how I help people with that is really getting them in touch with their body because most of us can feel because immaturity creates a contraction because it lacks truth and the body loves truth. It might not like it, but it's incredibly healing. It's incredibly healing to be in relationship with the truth.
it's a good distinction.
I mean, I don't love what's true all the time, but it doesn't change it. It's still true. Yeah, and the body really appreciates truth. There's a level of relaxation that can happen in the belly with the breath. We can take more of life in and let more of life go when we're in right relationship with what's true.
Mm,
So I would invite yeah, listeners, if you're trying to clarify the spots of life where you're operating more maturely versus more immaturely, you could notice like what your body feels in different environments. Do I have access to my full breath? How much of that life can get in and down? Because that also points to a feeling of safety and groundedness. And in order to act maturely, we need to feel safe. Otherwise, we're in fight or flight and then throw maturity out the back door, like survive, right?
yeah.
So it's like we're not thinking about being mature in that moment. So this takes practice. And, in the portal, we do breath work twice a month together, and that trains the nervous system. Like, how do I uh, move in the world when things feel stressful or chaotic? How do I stay present and connected to myself and the truth while things are intense?
Mm,
Because life's not going to stop lifing. It's not going to get less intense, but we can relate to it differently with these resources. And that's part of maturity too, is knowing that, there's this idea for a while it was around and about like follow your bliss. And of course, I love that. I mean, yes, we want to do what feels good. And sometimes life doesn't feel good. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're moving in the wrong direction. It could be a growth edge. It could be, calling you into another iteration of yourself. And it is true to keep moving. I liken life to the birth process. So if you know when to breathe, you know when to squeeze someone's hand, you know when to pause, you know when to push, you can relate to life and you can rebirth yourself and your life circumstances over and over and over again. But if you're expecting it to feel good all the time, that would be an aspect of immaturity because it's just not true that life feels good all of the time.
I love all of this. Okay. Right relationship with the truth as how you know where you're at on the maturity like spectrum. I'm in love with that. I'm going to borrow that.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah.
That's such a beautiful way to think about our evolution as human beings, as spiritual beings, uh, as we get closer and closer to the truth and like find these nuanced touch points with it, and maybe our truth expands, maybe it just gets bigger and bigger, and that truth does include the things that are painful and harmful, and that there's truth and beauty even in those really like hard things. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to shadow work and why like all of the Jungian perspectives just like from first exposure I was like this feels like truth. Like I like this. Like
Or please. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of gritty, like no one else is talking in this way. And also like there's some nuance in the darkness that's not bad and not scary. And just because it's unknown, like there's gifts here, like there's something nourishing here. Like, let's go there.
Absolutely. And I remember when the first workshop I took around shadow work was with Debbie Ford, the late Debbie Ford, who wrote Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And she asked us this question. There was like probably 500 or 600 of us in this auditorium, and she said, "Raise your hand if you're smart." And so, we kind of tentatively looked around and, raised our hands. And then she said, "Okay, now raise your hand if you're ever stupid." And we were like, "Is she like abusing us? Like, what is the point of this?" And so, and she goes, "You all better put your hand up." She's like, you can only ever go into like your gifts as much as you go into your shadows. And she was saying, of course, as a human, sometimes you're stupid. Like you make stupid decisions, you're not attuned, you're, making mistakes, whatever it might be. But I really appreciated that because she was talking about it on the continuum. And it's, a big part of my shadow work teaching is that our gifts, not only our trauma hides in the shadow, our gifts also hide in there.
Yes.
Right? And
They're
if we
all in
never
there.
we never look in there, especially when our traumas happened early in life, because in order to protect our preciousness and our sacredness, we tuck that really deep down in there. So if we got in trouble for sharing an opinion, then we learn like my voice isn't valuable, or I get in trouble for expressing myself. And then we get quieter and quieter and quieter, or we take on the voice of others and we've lost our own truth, our own access to what we think and believe and know. So it's I would say it's the most important work that we will ever do to really know ourselves and to work to show up in life as true to us as we can.
Yes, yes. I'm so glad that you pulled in that like the gifts, the beauty, the nourishment that's in there because I think there's some like social media stuff around like shadow and that it's associated with like darkness or like I don't even want to say darkness because darkness is kind of accurate because it's unknown, it's subconscious. It's not bad, it's not necessarily dangerous. Like there it's just out of our realm of consciousness and it's still impacting the way that we are operating, usually in much more harmful ways because it's in there.
I would say it's much more dangerous to not know what's in there because otherwise it's coming out sideways, right? It's like in
Yes.
the like coming out the back door, or and then we're not seeing it, and it's often revealed to us in relationship, like other people see uh things about us that we haven't wanted to look at. And yeah, you're right. I don't, it's not good or bad. It's just, it just is.
Yeah.
And I love the word unknown. That's what came up for me. It's like shadows are just, they're mysteries. They're things that are unknown.
I love
They're hiding.
mysteries. I like that word
Yeah.
too. That's like kind of exciting.
They're hiding in the dark.
Yeah.
And I also think of, the from an archetypal perspective, the feminine is like the great mystery, like the great unknown. And the feminine is also like down and in. So I've been curious about how we've demonized shadow or darkness because the patriarchal nature of our world, the patriarchy valuing more masculine things, the seen, the known, the blah. And this is like revering the great mystery, revering things that are hidden, revealing things that have not been ready to be known. And I think that's an aspect of the healing that we're all going through collectively is bringing forth the gifts of the feminine and honoring the mystery and instead of being scared and shying away from it, moving toward it, moving into
Mhm.
it, and trusting ourselves to do that. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
the just the ability to be comfortable with and curious with the unknown or uncertainty or mystery. Like so many people really struggle with that. It's anxiety provoking even. Like there's so much around like wanting to grip tightly to everything that you know and to control, and it's our ego trying to keep us safe, trying to protect us. And maybe one at one point, like you mentioned in our lives, like maybe that was learned because of safety concerns. But as we move through this process of getting closer and closer to truth and right relationship with truth, like you have to start to lean into the trust enough to be okay in those uncertain moments and know that uncertainty doesn't equal unsafety.
Absolutely. That's huge right there. Uncertainty doesn't equal unsafety. It's like our body feels like it's just inherently true that what's unknown or uncertain is unsafe. And just because something feels unsafe doesn't mean that it is. That's where it's like sometimes what we think is intuition is actually fear masquerading as intuition or as truth.
Mhm.
The body always knows when something's going on, but you don't always accurately discern what it is that the body is trying to say to you. And I think that's when we have trauma stored that's not been processed, we aren't really accurate seers of our experience.
Mhm.
And that's just the reality of the impact of trauma. And that's why trauma work and doing our shadow work is so important because it liberates us to really see life and to see ourselves accurately.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're walking around like really confused and making decisions based on illusions and distortions rather than the truth. That's why a lot of people wake up and they don't recognize their life, or they get divorced or do all these things later in life. It's like because we make a life based on things that aren't true
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
we see them and get to do something different.
Mhm. Oh, I feel like you just hit onto like the philosophy of my entire like life's work. Like this concept of being internally guided. It's like my life philosophy, and also the mystery that I'm constantly untangling. And that's one of the things I see in people a lot is this, as we start to try to trust that part of us that knows what is true, often there is trauma or shadow, or like there are things, projections, patterns, conditioning that are preventing us from being able to discern what is our body letting us know that this is actually unsafe, and what is a pattern or a stored response or a trauma, a wound that hasn't been healed. How in your work do you navigate through that? I'm in a different realm and I don't have the psychotherapy background. So I think depending on the person that comes to me, sometimes I'm like, we do the trauma work with the therapist and then we come back and then we continue. But how do you navigate around that for folks to help them start to go through that process of discernment?
Well, one, it's the a willingness to, do you want to discern? Are you willing to feel what needs to be felt in order to come home to the truth and to trust your internal guidance system again? And when the willingness is there, I move incredibly slowly in this work because oftentimes people try to move so quickly that it's easy to miss things. And the nervous system doesn't give accurate information when we're speeding fast through things. So I will ask a question, trying to think of like an example. Like if someone's trying to make a decision about a relationship, for example, like staying or going, like doing this or doing that, you know, we could spend a whole session just what does your body want you to know about that? What are
Mm,
you afraid would happen if you stayed? What are you afraid would happen if you went? What does this remind you of? Um, who are you inside of this relationship? Does it make you
mm,
feel more peaceful or more activated? And we just gather information little by little by little. And part of it is just learning what truth feels like in the body and what trauma feels like in the body.
mm,
And there's typically locations I find. Some people contract in the belly, for example, or open in the belly, or contract in the heart, or open in the heart. Like we all tend to have like a truth meter and a way that our body communicates truth. And I would also say doing this work as you get started with a guide who is, qualified. They're embodied in their own. I mean, obviously, all of us still have some trauma, so you're not going to find someone who has no trauma to help you,
Yeah.
but someone who's embodied enough to mirror back and to sit with and who will be honest with you if something feels untrue. They're not like just people pleasers who are like yesing you all over the place. It's like something
Mhm.
feels off about that. I hear that you believe that, but something feels off. Does anything feel off to you? Like, can you trust your practitioner to honestly guide you and help you resonate with the frequency of truth?
Mm. I love that. Yeah, that's such an important quality to have when you're doing this work with any kind of support, that they are going to be able to be a real mirror for you.
Yes.
And yeah, not just this echo chamber of the things you want to hear.
Isn't that nice for a minute? But again, that's like where that maturity comes in. Our little girl might want an echo chamber, but our woman wants the truth.
Hmm.
She wants to know that she can sit with you and you're going to tell her what what you're sensing and not take away her sovereignty or tell her what she's feeling, but create a space where that can be explored and she can come to her own internal awareness around that. And it takes time. The thing that my work, people tend to circle me for a long time before they land in my work. And it's just something I've come to accept over the years. And the feedback I get from people is because they kind of need to try the other things. A lot of times we're really desperate for change. So we go for someone that promises us the quick fix or says they've got the 5 simple steps that get them XYZ results. And while healing can be miraculous and it can be fast, usually it's the culmination of many things that have happened before that moment, and then everything just clicks into place.
Yeah.
So my work requires devotion. It's slow. I don't put everyone through the same process. Yeah, help guide you to your own, build your nervous system capacity, and then train you to know yourself and your own cues. And I require a minimum of a year engagement with our community to be able to, for me to be able to back what I'm doing. So I just caution everybody to just notice, like, what are people promising you? Like when you're desperate, you can really be seduced by some empty guarantees. And healing just takes the time it takes,
Yeah.
and shadow work takes the time it takes. And there's always more of it. It's also, I love
Yeah.
when people,
Yeah, you're never
oh,
done. It's such a part of the joy.
graduated. I found a shadow. I graduated. I'm like, until tomorrow when another
Yeah.
one emerges. But once you know the process and you've alchemized a few, now you know, okay, cool. So when that comes again, as it will, I can look at it. It always cracks me up when people say, "Oh yeah, I did my inner child work." I'm like, "That's so cute." I used to
Yeah,
think
you're
that
not
too. I'm
done.
like,
Yeah.
just because you talked to your little girl one time in a therapy session in 1997 doesn't mean we're done, you know?
Yeah, she's
I,
still there.
I do inner child work every day, so
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
I love your approach, and I think that like your containers is genius because you're right, this work does take time. And I mean, even when I reflect back on my own healing journey, it's like so many chapters and so many unfoldings and so many different coaches, therapists, modalities, teachers. Like it wasn't one quick fix. Anytime someone's saying you're gonna get magic from this one thing, like be skeptical. But I also love your I keep hearing you return to the body, and I think that that is really powerful, and especially that initial process of discernment, in that you have to know and be aware of the body to even know what those patterns are that might be signifying that you aren't in right relationship with truth. So like just starting to practice the breathing, starting to be aware of the body. Yeah.
Yeah, scanning the body. And oftentimes when we have trauma in the body isn't a very exciting place to be. We have anxiety, we have panic, we have tension, tightness, pain. So that's again why we move slowly. We don't manhandle the body. We don't re-traumatize the body by trying to force it to be somewhere that it's not
Mm.
in a non-consensual way. Like I find a lot of times the healing process is more violating than an initial violation was sometimes. Like the healing process needs to be consensual, and you can't like hijack fearful parts and make them be better or not scared. You have to meet that fear. And so if you can only take one deep breath and then you check out and it gets too scary, then that's your practice for today.
Mm.
And if tomorrow you can take two, then that's where you're at. If you can meditate for, a minute, congratulations. Like that's longer than you did it yesterday. So it's
Mm.
not about like pushing yourself. You go to your edge and then you stop, right? You don't push yourself beyond the edge because then you have to clean up. I mean, you can, and we're resilient, and sometimes we do push over that edge, but it's not really where the healing happens. Then we come back, we regroup, and then we go again, finding the edge without going over it.
Yeah.
So I call that staying within your range.
Yeah, yeah, because you're still getting close enough to that point to grow, but you're not sacrificing safety and
Yeah.
safety in your body. You're not like coercing yourself as part of the process, which, yeah, you're right. So often people end up in those situations where, yeah, the healing is like this destructive, like dragging you through it with
Yeah.
against your will and just totally disregarding all the signals that are saying it's not safe, stop, I'm not ready. Yeah, that's not the intention, right, of the
That
process.
needs to be honored too, right? And that actually creates more safety, more trust, and then you can probably go further next time.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm aware of this light shining, which over my shoulder, which I've never seen before. And I just
I
find it so fascinating that
I
we're talking
love
to
it.
shadow and
I
oh my
almost commented on it like multiple times because it's evolved throughout the call and you're like glowing. I'm
God.
like
I
you're like
usually close the blinds, and
mystical.
for some reason I left them open today. So, all right, the
I
light is
love
with
it.
us.
Yes, it's beautiful. Okay, so I want to leave a little space at the end because I know we had talked about you maybe drawing a card, but before we do that, we've covered so much ground. Is there anything that you wanted to get to that we didn't, or anything you're feeling called to share before we start to wrap up the conversation?
I feel pretty full. I think we touched on a lot of beautiful things. I would love to play with the cards for a bit. That I feel like is the last piece that feels like we kind of tease them a little bit, and that could be really fun.
Okay, well, let's do it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll do a collective reading, which is basically where I'll shuffle the deck and I'll ask like what your listeners would most benefit from healing or hearing, what shadow pattern wants to reveal itself. So here's the
Mm.
messages from Shadow Oracle Deck and Healing System. It has 34 cards. Most are shadow energies. There's a few cards that we call amplifiers and a few light cards as well. So I'm just going to shuffle. What do our internally guided listeners need to hear? And since energy transcends time and space, whenever you're listening, there will likely be wisdom in the card that emerges for you. I love this. So the card, there's kind of two that were stuck together, so I'm going with both.
Okay.
So the first one, the shadow pattern is scarcity.
Oh, no, it's not. Of course it is, though. Of course.
The shadow pattern of scarcity. And interestingly, we then got the light card of infinite enoughness.
Oh my gosh. My
So
heart.
these are like, yes, we might be buying into some scarcity consciousness and the reminder of infinite enoughness. All the cards also correlate with the seven primary chakras. So scarcity clears in the sacral chakra below the belly button, our place of creation, our place of birthing. And infinite enoughness is red, that clears in the root chakra. Like I affirming that you have a right to be here, you have a right to take up space, you have a right to have what is yours to have, not somebody else's, but yours, right? And there is a divine inheritance that is here for you, and you can cash in on that as you remember that you are worthy of having it. So there's a healing mantra for each card, and I do just want to offer that so that people can work with those as they desire. So the healing mantra for the scarcity energy is it's simple. I am worthy of tuning into the infinite abundance that I am.
Mm,
I am worthy of tuning into the infinite abundance that I am. And then the infinite enoughness card. Oh, I love this one. This one is I am enough, even though. And then you fill in the blank with a behavior, a trait, an
mm,
action, a decision, or a circumstance that you're having a hard time forgiving yourself for, or you think that that's making, like, that's a condition upon which your enoughness is based.
mm,
Like a lot of us have the pattern of I have to do something to earn money or love or relationship or resource and so this is just that inherent enoughness because you are a sovereign and divine fractal of source here in form. So I am enough even though, and then I invite you to get specific, like what is that thing that you feel you're not enough because of, and just let that live there and affirm that.
mm. Love that. I don't think that that could have been more perfect or divine. I'm not surprised, but I am in awe. Like I'm in just a moment of awe. Like our conversation just perfectly moved through, and to be left with that ending like medicine. Yeah, it's perfect.
Thank you for receiving it. And if you knew the rest of the deck, I mean, it's so interesting because the energies are really just such a variety of them. So the fact that this was a primary focus of ours and that's what came, I'm always amazed at how these beauties work. And usually when an environment is really receptive and ready, it's like even more on point. So this to me just speaks to your relationship with shadow work and your courage to go into it, and then how that gets to translate to your listeners and everyone who will hear this.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm just so grateful in this moment. I'm out of words. That doesn't happen to me
Oh,
very often.
well, we can be speechless together.
Thank you so much. This has been such a gift. Where can people find you? I want to make sure that they can stay in connection if they're feeling called, aligned, curious. Yeah.
Sure. KeriNola.com is my website. It was recently rebirthed a few months ago and is the home base where all the magic happens. I've got some free things there. I've got all kinds of yeah, offers and opportunities, and would love to have anyone visit.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, we'll have the link to that in the show notes, and hope everybody could just take this to heart. This has been such a gift, such a magical, enlightening, beautiful conversation, and there's just medicine here for everybody. So I hope that you find whatever little piece called to you, whatever triggered that nudge, and stay with it. Stay with it a little longer, maybe than you might typically after a podcast. Give yourself permission for that. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you again, Keri, for spending this time with me. This has
You're
been
so
such a
welcome. Thank
gift.
you for having me. I'm so touched for the invitation.
I'm so grateful. Take care of yourselves out there, and we'll talk soon. Bye. Thank you for listening. If this episode spoke to you, please take a moment to follow, rate, and share it with someone who might need it. If you're looking for more tools to help you thrive in your life, or if you're curious about working with me, please visit my website at internallyguidedleadership.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok at Internally Guided Coach. Be gentle with yourself out there, and I'll talk to you next time.